Hey everybody, I'm here with composer Kaley Lane Eaton. Hi Kaley.
Hello.
So we wanted to just take a moment and talk about a new work of hers for solo piano and live electronics called Free that we are premiering this Wednesday at 8 p.m. on Kaley's YouTube channel. So, just a quick little background from my perspective about the piece. So last year, I received a For Culture grant to commission four Seattle-based composers to write pieces for me using piano and electronics or prepared piano and visual components. And so I received Kaley's finished piece late last year. And so, though we were lucky enough to premiere it live Cornish right before the lockdowns, this piece really kind of
Yeah, like literally just like days before.
yeah, exactly. So that was my last time I performed in public.
Yeah.
so so yeah, we did that at Cornish, and it began to take kind of a new life, I think, through our exchanges over recordings and video editing, kind of back and forth. And so the work is being premiered as a sort of collaboration art film, as the way you were talking about it little
Yeah.
while ago, and I think that's good. And
Mhm.
which we did over the lockdown. So
Mhm.
anyway, so I thought maybe to give some context, I thought it'd be good for you to maybe talk about sort of the inspiration of the work. What are the connections like among this piece and like free will and the literature that inspired it and all that?
Yeah, so I started writing this piece, I think in the fall, September of last year, maybe a little bit before that. And it's inspired heavily by Shoshana Zuboff's great, huge tome called The Age of Surveillance Capitalism, which is basically a massive takedown, but also like a deep criticism, investigation, discussion of the forces at play in our world right now with surveillance capital. And that means the big tech companies are basically just collecting data on us and using that to target not only ads, but experiences, political candidates, anything that you can think of. It's like this funnel of just continuing feedback that allows people to basically only experience an online reality that's sort of deeply catered to them. It's a filter bubble that we've all heard about. And so it's a very kind of complex process, but the main thing that she sort of talks about in this is that the result of that kind of data mining and just constant feeding it back to people is a sort of behavior modification where people are kind of pushed to be more extreme in certain ways. This has a lot to do with ad revenue because the more predictable people become, the more likely companies that buy ad revenue are able to get those people to actually consume their product. So she calls that behavioral futures, which is really like, I still don't fully grasp it, but it's such a like incredible term to think about the fact that people are actually trading on our behavior. That's how our economy works now. And it's everywhere. It's literally absolutely everything that you engage with that has some kind of online component to it. Like you can get a dishwasher that connects to Wi-Fi now, and that will collect data on like when you run your dishwasher, and that like says something about you. So in her book, she talks a lot about how this phenomenon is essentially puts our free will at risk. And if you put free will at risk, you also threaten democracy. And I think even without that whole discussion, it's really come to kind of popular knowledge now that the way that a lot of these tech platforms work really is not helping democracy in a lot of ways, with the spread of fake news being a major part of that and things like that. So free comes from this idea of like, are we really free if everything that we're consuming is really trying very hard to get us to be a certain way and to do a certain thing? So yeah, that's the inspiration.
Yeah, and I have to say, like as a performer, playing this piece of music, I had to ask myself all sorts of questions that I never really had to before. Kind of entering into this mindset of playing with the electronics, which are, a huge part of a part of the work, right? And
Mm-hmm.
going at this idea of free will, and essentially, I am this human representation of the human element on stage, right, or in this video, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's yeah, something else I wanted to talk about. So, which was the electronics. So, it immediately struck me, that was that how simple the electronics were.
Yeah.
I've done some things with electronics. It's very, very complex, right? But
Mm-hmm.
this is essentially just mimicking me at one note at a time, right?
Yep.
And but yet how powerful it could be at like portraying this like duality of technology and humanity, right?
Yeah.
So I was hoping maybe you could talk a little bit about what's going on in the actual electronics and how that works to connect, free will and the piece.
Yeah, so my dog is barking, so that'll figure that. It's his walk time. So the electronics, you're right, they are very simple, and I think that might be the thing. One of the things I'm really, really proud about with this piece is that it's actually essentially one line of code, and the code says for the computer to listen to what you're playing and try to just spit that out in a sine tone, right? And a sine tone is just a single frequency without any overtones. So it's a very simple tone. It's what we kind of associate with just like an electronic sound. And that's really hard for the computer to do, because even if you play one piano note, there's all these other overtones, there's all these other sounds that like cannot be replicated with this particular algorithm. And that to me seemed like such the perfect metaphor for having yourself represented as data. And that's how these companies see us, right? We're not people, we're not bodies, we're just like collections of data. And then in being told constantly that that's what we are by our consuming and interacting with these platforms, we start to become that, right? We start to become these like sine tone versions of ourselves. So that's it. And in the electronics, it starts as a sine tone. It turns into a sawtooth wave kind of in the middle when the piece starts getting really intense, which is still a very simple sound. It has a couple more partials to it, but it just kind of adds to the intensity. And there's also like a moment where there's some ring modulating happening, which is the same idea, but through that, it's still just one algorithm where, the laptop is just listening to what you're doing and trying to do it. So
Yeah, and depending on the piano and the day, even, or like how close the microphones are or whatever, it'll pick up different parts of a chord, right? Or overtones, like you were saying. So it's always a little bit different, right? And I think that was actually that's one of my favorite parts of this, is like when it is different, right? When it does like sort of like pick up the overtones instead of did I just glitch out there for a
you
second?
froze, but I'm like, it's totally cool because that's what we're talking
Yeah,
about. Yeah.
exactly. See?
So it's fine.
But as I was saying, like when it would like pick up new things or sort of have a mistake. That is like my favorite part about it, because in a way, like at first I thought I had to kind of rein this in, but then the more I thought about it and the more I became comfortable with the piece, what I realized is that was awesome, and it felt like it gave me like power, like like
Yeah.
like I was at battle with this,
Yeah.
and it's like you screwed up again, but it was so beautiful the way it would sort of mess up in a sense, in
Yeah.
terms of what it was trying to replicate. So those are those sort of favorite moments, and being able to duet with the failures
Yeah.
is really a lot of fun. So I really appreciate that simplicity to it, and just how perfect it kind of draws the connection with the inspiration of the work. So
Yeah, yeah, I love the way that you hear it and play with it. That's just so exactly what I was hoping for in the performance of this piece. And that the fact that there are mistakes is like fundamentally like what it's about, right? It's just
exactly.
like the fact that this Zoom just glitched out. Like we need these reminders that like this is not reality. Like there are
Right.
elements of it that are cool. Like it's great to like, Zoom with people and talk to them, or it's really cool to hear a computer try to mimic piano. Like that's awesome, but we need to be reminded that like we as fleshy bodies like are superior to that, and also that we invented that and we do control it. Like this whole myth that AI is going to like take over the world is like not, that's kind of a mythology, right?
Yeah.
Because we make AI. So even if AI becomes something that's really powerful, like we still make it, we contribute to it. Like
Sure.
it's not this thing that just was invented on its own out of the ether. So yeah, that's a whole thing.
Well, I'm really excited to get this out there. So I'll put this just in the comments. I'll put your YouTube channel in the comments, and people can pick that up, and I'll send this out. And certainly look forward to this Wednesday, 8 o'clock. Right?
Yep.
All right. Thanks, Kaley.
Yeah.